This cutie pootie is named Alicent Hightower, who, according to the brain-dead marketing team at HBO, was once a shy but helpful young lady. Now she's domineering and ambitious, apparently. Well, at least that's her projected character arc. Mayhaps this queen has some plots and schemes.
Did you have a candidate in mind, Your Grace?
I myself served in this role for my husband. I am well prepared to do it again.
You played your part admirably in a time of peace, Your Grace, but circumstances have changed.
It is...
Oh wait, nope. Here she is sulking in the writer's room. I mean, small council.
Yoink!
Yoink!
Aw, poor Alicent doesn't get to play with the egg thing anymore. Bear in mind this is an adult. A grown-ass woman in her 30s or 40s. Hard to tell because they've kept her around the same age as her grown-ass son, but we can assume she's middle-aged and behaving with less maturity than this kiddo. Is someone who weeps and whines at the first moment of opposition really all that domineering and ambitious? Probably not. She does take a lot of baths, though. She spends a lot of time drinking tea, swimming, spending time in water. A kind of lame, spongy pseudo-ophelia. Alicent Hightower is a character who diverges radically from her book counterpart. In George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, she is depicted as a politically shrewd, calculating woman, serving as queen consort to King Viserys, and later as a key player in the civil war known as the Dance of Dragons. In the book, she is considerably older than her rival Rhaenyra, and their relationship is strictly political. I wouldn't call her an outright villain, but she is pragmatic when she needs to be. This quote, for example: "With the princess in confinement on Dragonstone, about to give birth, the Greens enjoyed an advantage. The longer Rhaenyra remained ignorant of the king's death, the slower she would be to move. Mayhaps the whore will die in childbirth," Queen Alicent said. Just an example of her cold efficiency, with Alicent working to secure the throne for her son, Aegon II, against Rhaenyra's claim. However, in the show adaptation, Alicent is significantly aged down, making her and Rhaenyra contemporaries who were once close friends, a change that was initially well received. This alteration added emotional weight and pathos to their later conflict, making the eventual bloodshed and war all the more hard-hitting. Yet, the cynic in me suspects that this choice may have been made for more dubious reasons, namely the subtext of Alicent's burgeoning, unrequited, borderline sexual obsession with Rhaenyra. This is a dynamic that adds another layer of tension, but not in a meaningful, productive way. By softening her age difference and backstory, the show is leaning heavily into modern sensibilities at the expense of the show, just really casting aspersions on Alicent's motivations. Is she just a sexual degenerate who makes weighty political decisions based on her own personal lust, or what? It's a really strange interpretation of the character. Frankly, her crush on the Dragon Queen comes across as a tad obsessive.
I mean, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan.
I have neither weapon nor armor. My life itself is forfeit. I cast myself on the mercy of a friend who once loved me. Come with me.
Fucking cringe. Fucking creepy. And by the way, this all happens after Rhaenyra demands Alicent cut off her own son's head.
If I am to take the throne, I must put an end to the opposition. I must take Aegon's head. Choose.
Who the hell is this self-loathing poor man's Medea? And what has she done with the real Alicent Hightower? Her book self had both backbone and loyalty to her house, as evidenced here. "The city is yours, princess. but you will not hold it long. The rats play when the cat is gone, but my son will return with fire and blood. Too bad the show version has none of this bluster. In House of the Dragon, or House of the Dunces, as I'm apt to call it, Alicent is reduced to a sad, soppy, spineless matriarch who can't stand the sight of her own sons. She seems more bothered at the beginning of the second season by the fact she didn't achieve orgasm than by her bloody murder of her own grandson. Sadness is a condition of motherhood, she laments. The writer's aiming for a dreary kind of postpartum depression. But even that falls on its head, as show Alicent doesn't seem to value her sons as adult beings in their own respect. She doesn't even value their lives. She betrays them in a heartbeat. And she can barely bite back her contempt for Aegon.
What is it?
They don't care what I think.
What thoughts would you have?
Her character is ultimately reduced to a depressive housewife archetype. If I wanted to watch a woman fall apart at the seams under the pressure of domesticity, I'd turn on Mad Men and revisit Betty Draper's arc. At least there it was done with nuance and intention. Here it's an outright failure. She's reduced to a weepy emotional wreck, portrayed as a docile, misguided mother whose only defining characteristic is her queer obsession with Rhaenyra.
This is a vile accusation. Is it? You Targaryens do have queer customs.
I swear to God she's using the Q word here in its modern sense. Everyone's favourite writer, Sarah Hess, says as much. Hess, herself a lesbian, a renaissance shipper, is no doubt partly responsible for pushing the show in this direction. But were these lovely ladies really getting into hanky-panky on Dragonback? Not that there's a problem with that, but why make it the central focus of the second season when there's a civil war being waged? But it comes across more as a twisted obsession than actual love, and it isn't even all that well developed.
What are you doing? So you remember. If the Scepter sees this book, then the Scepter.
Holding hands and vandalizing a Septa's book can hardly be a substitute for real organic development of a relationship. Imparting so much significance onto something that was an element of, but not central to the Civil War is a big narrative misstep. The second season is largely dedicated to the humiliation of Alicent. She's given a really good hazing, too dead inside to give a damn about her own family, instead sacrificing everything for a woman who has not given the faintest hint she gives a damn about her. She is a new sort of Hollywood stereotype, that of the willowy, weepy, weak woman who wants what's best for everyone. A brain-dead peacekeeper, pseudo-peacekeeper. The result of these weird fixations are constant unnecessary scenes, some that are so brain-dead the writers unintentionally propagate the notion of women being intellectually inferior. This dumb scene where Ray goes to the capital to meet the woman whose grandson, her king consort, decapitated, proves exactly why neither of these half-witted dopes ought to be anywhere near that throne. They are simply too stupid to be entrusted with a role of governance. Furthermore, Alicent reveals herself to be a yellow-bellied coward who puts self-preservation before all else. If she had cried out, it would have resulted in Rhaenyra's capture and possibly a premature end to the war. But no, she just thinks of herself, if she's thinking at all. By reducing her political motivations to keeping the peace, or obsessing about her homosexual romance, she is ultimately stripped of all formidability and intellect. Why? In the books, she was capable of manipulating the highest courts in Westeros. In the show, she is a lamentable lesbian, barely able to make a political decision without bursting into tears. or this weird misery porn kind of facial expression the producers have her doing. It all begins with the Green Council, where Alicent suddenly starts backpedaling on her decision to push Aegon, even though the first season had her doing this.
Alicent, stay with the king!
Saying this.
But in the world, we must defend our own. If Rhaenyra comes into power, your very life could be forfeit.
Generally acting like this. Generally acting like a halfway decent political player.
You may do as you wish, husband. When I am cold in my grave.
Interestingly enough, a lot of her best lines are from The Princess and the Queen, written by Sarah Hess. So what happened to reduce Alicent from a savvy player to this wretched Queen of the Fishes?
There's the Queen of Fishes!
What the fuck is that even meant to be a reference to, anyway? The fact that she's always in water? Is she Aquaman or something now? Anyway, the small folk turning against her is probably the best scene to highlight what a humiliation ritual the writers have put her through, and why, to atone for her sin of daring to challenge Rhaenyra's claim. This is a whack job interpretation of the source material. Even George Martin came out to address this. Writing in his blog, he said, "Queen Helena, its sweet and gentle soul, is much beloved by the small folk of King's Landing. Rhaenyra was not. Why misrepresent the Green's popularity just to prop up Rhaenyra on this strange pseudo-feminist altar? And don't get me started on the weird sexual fetishism. The foot scene, the weird sponge baths, the misery porn close-ups. It's all a bit concerning. And while Alicent and the Greens generally have their sexualities depicted as tacit and ugly, the same standards do not apply to Rhaenyra and the Blacks, despite some of her dalliances bordering on outright sexual assault. All in all, Alicent's character assassination boils down to these main points. Hinging the narrative on an illogical obsession with her supposed political rival, corrupting her core motivations by making her favour self-preservation over the well-being of her family, heavy-handed ritualistic humiliation to drive home the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's claim, and finally, a weak-handed attempt at feminism, reducing her to the role of a brain-dead peacekeeper who rejects bloodshed while covertly participating in it. The inconsistency of her character results in a bundle of contradictions and a hypocritical mess of a human being. At worst, she is a deeply unstable sociopathic woman. Alicent is far from popular, but in this case, the fault is not in the stars or indeed with herself. Rather, it is the heavy-handed didactism of the HBO writers' room that has resulted in the doom of the Queen of the Fishes.